Office Hours. Our chat line is open and we're taking your marketing questions. So let us know how we can help with whatever marketing things you're doing. And as for who we are Shift Collaborative. I'm Cynthia Closkey, one of the partners at Shift. And with me is Sarah Mayer.
Hi, everyone.
And also we have a special guest today, Kelly Curry, who is Shift's very own digital marketing manager.
Hello.
Kelly, this is your second time on the show. Yeah.
It is, yeah. Couldn't get enough of it, you know.
Right, and we couldn't get enough of you. So Kelly is going to talk today about all the important things that we want to know about landing pages. So we've talked about landing pages a little bit before, but we're going to dive in a little bit more today and give some more practical examples and dig in. If you are our beloved viewer are wondering how to use landing pages in your marketing efforts, I encourage you to send any questions that you want live to our live stream chat here on YouTube. You can also email us at officehours@shiftcollaborative.com, and we'll snatch those questions up and share them back out again. By the way, this other special guest is Max the cat, who thinks it's lunchtime and has therefore decided to join Office Hours to remind me to hurry up, get through it so I can get him some lunch. So before we get on to the Office Hours, let's dive into news for the week, marketing news. What cool things have you seen or interesting things have you seen in the news this week, Sarah?
Yeah, something that's been making headlines all week is this Google case that the Department of Justice has levied against the search giant. So they sort of officially filed their antitrust case this week. And as I understand it, the suit is primarily focused on Google search and not some of their other products like ads, which is something we use every day, all day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So pulling up here this article from the Washington Post, a little bit about what exactly does this mean. I mean, I can remember way back the big antitrust lawsuits from the 80s against Microsoft, and this seems like a similar in some ways, where we're talking about an organization creating a massive ecosystem that it's kind of hard to use any part of it without using all of it. And it's hard also to choose the alternatives, like while there is some competition, it's not really competition. It's just not very big, or not very competitive. So.
Right.
Yeah, I think they even highlight in this article that like Apple, although you typically think of Apple as a direct competitor of Google's, like it helps, there it is. Yeah, it helps like feed into this, problem.
Right. So you think, okay, well, sure, there's Apple phones and there's Android phones. And therefore they're competitors. And yet the technology that works between them is really a little bit more integrated than people realize. And of course, Apple doesn't do search at all, so they don't compete on that level. So because Apple doesn't do search, they needed a search engine kind of tie into it. They ended up, using Google's search and paying back out there. So. So it's tricky. And I can remember, like back with the Microsoft situation, they were like, well, okay, so Internet Explorer is this new tool, this new browser that's been created. So but it's also been mixed into the operating system of Windows computers. So just separate it. And then the programmers at Microsoft are like, how? Like you can't, it's literally not possible. And that is effectively the same thing that's going on here with Google, where Google has woven its technologies into all of the things that it's doing. And that's why it can do what it does, but it also means that that all of the things that maybe we are not so sure that we're excited about Google doing, a lot of things that are maybe privacy concerns, like we don't have a way around them. We're stuck with them, and we're stuck being sort of basically monitored and tracked everywhere we go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tricky scene. So do you guys though, as much as I'm sounding as though I'm very anti-Google, I use Google all the time. like everything, and including, as you can tell here, Chrome as my browser. So it's just hard to get around. Do you guys make any effort at all to avoid the Google stratosphere, ecoverse, whatever you want to call it, multiverse?
Well, I mean, no, because as you pointed out, there's as a business, we're a Google Apps user, so like our email and our file storage and our meeting software. I mean, everything we do is sort of locked in, and generally it's kind of like, well, it's kind of nice to have it all in one place, and you get familiar with the interfaces, and they, have connectivity between them. So if you understand the user face of one, you can pop up with another one, and it's not so different. So it's kind of like a lot of nice things to having it all in one platform.
Yeah, I have trouble getting myself to, or would have trouble getting myself to not utilize some of the products, because the things that for some people feel really invasive when it comes to privacy also make for like a really great tailored experience in a lot of the Google products. So and I enjoy that about it. So I think it would be hard for me to pull myself away from it despite everything.
Yeah.
I do every now and again think that I'd better at least have a different search engine, just try something different. And there are, of course, now search engines that are focused on privacy. And, Mozilla's Firefox has always been a little bit more privacy oriented. So there's that. But like you say, everything is kind of pulled together. From an advertiser perspective, when you compare the advertising options on a Bing versus on a Google Ads, what do you see as the differences and the strengths of each of them?
Well, I mean, much like Google Ads, that you can connect to analytics, and you can, kind of connect up all of these tools so that you can, track behavior and track conversions. You do that in Google just as well as you could do it in Bing. The interfaces, because this is possibly, and Kelly, you could speak to this, we're so used to Google's interfaces. When we go over to Bing, it's a bit like, it's not a great experience.
It's a little bit like stepping back, and it doesn't look as good. It's not as easy to use.
It does feel a little antiquated, and it's just not as comfortable. And again, I don't know if that's because we're just so used to how Google's interface. I mean, Google changes their. One of the other things that I think I read in this article, and maybe another one, is that like Google doesn't. They're alleging that Google doesn't really have to, update their stuff. They can kind of just keep rolling out the same things, and it's like they change it all the time. And I'm constantly seeing new, like all the new icons rolled out this week and some last week. For example, like what you see in the corner, if you're using Gmail, the little icon is like an envelope, but the envelope looks different now. It just looks more like an M. And then, to me, I see them constantly changing and evolving things, so much so that like one week, something that we find, like, we know where to locate this thing that we always look, like this stat that's something we commonly look at. We go in a week later and it's like not there, or it's you have to find it in a new way. So I feel like they're constantly changing things up, and it just with Bing doesn't feel as fresh or changed.
Yeah, and I think this article talks about this too, but there's just, in terms of the user universe, there's fewer people on Bing. And so, we have some clients that have used it in the past, but, for anyone who's just getting started, typically we don't end up, if they just have enough budget for one, we don't end up necessarily branching into Bing unless it makes sense. And I know we've had other discussions about, the people that are searching on Bing sometimes can differ in age or intention than that of Google. So I guess to your question, Cynthia, on the ad side, there's a lot of considerations between the two.
It sounds like all the things you're talking about there on the, the smaller network and so on is kind of proof of exactly what the Justice Department is alleging, is that they've become too big, and that's exactly what antitrust suits are about. So this will be something that we're going to need to watch pretty closely. And I think there are opportunities for other competitors, but their battle is uphill, and that's when government might choose to move in. So interesting for us to watch as it evolves.
Yes.
And it'll evolve over years. It's not going to be like this is decided in a couple of months. So we'll be watching it for a while.
For sure. Other news in the week. I saw something about avocados. What is this about avocados?
I don't know. I'm a big fan of avocados. I like it in my guacamole. I don't know how else you would make guacamole now that I say it out loud, but on my toast and on all sorts of salads and that sort of thing. So it's a big part of my life personally. But if you're a sports fan and you pay attention to or if you're not a sports fan, but you pay attention to the Super Bowl commercials, which is, kind of like the advertising Super Bowl of the year, you will not see any ads from Avocados from Mexico, which is the site that you have up here.
Now I'm immediately hungry.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. They make it look so appetizing. But, their ads that they've been running have typically been, hey, like, let's all get together around the game. And of course, you're going to bring guacamole. And, it's more like this like group party atmosphere in their commercials. And so they decided that they would just hit pause this year. People aren't getting together for the game, most likely, hopefully. And, or their get together will look a lot different. And, so they just decided they're not gonna advertise. And they, they kind of said it's not about the money. It's about just being sensitive to the fact that people really can't gather this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I had not realized. So obviously this is a trade group, Avocados from Mexico, and they're pushing in particular the Haas avocado, which is apparently there's different kinds of avocados, but that's the one that many of us are so familiar with, partly because it travels so well as it's getting shipped to your grocery store. But I'm impressed by their other efforts here. I mean, this is a fun little website to explore. Mm-hmm. So, I think that I don't know how much. I do wonder how much benefit they were getting from their ad in the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, if you haven't bought your avocado a couple days before the Super Bowl, right. You aren't going to be able to eat them then. All you'll be able to think of is, shoot, I should have brought
those avocados.
I should have bought avocados a couple days ago so they'd be ripe today. So we could have guacamole right now. So
yeah, I guess that is interesting. But maybe, I don't know, maybe they do them. I haven't paid attention. Maybe they do them leading up to the big game and in the actual, day of stuff too. Who knows? But, I think a lot of advertisers, we're seeing a lot of these huge companies and brands that typically spend a lot of money in advertising, not doing that. And I've been reading, I don't know, just various different articles about it would be really great if these big brands, redistributed some of those advertising dollars to, pandemic relief efforts, for example, or, to help sponsor events that have to go virtual now, and just like putting that money to use in a different way. And it would still benefit them because, if they're, doing a big sponsorship for a virtual event, they still get the boost out of that. And if they are supporting pandemic relief efforts with those dollars, that's a PR, play. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that I'm not saying that no brands are doing this. I hope that these avocado people are going to do something similar. Support somebody that needs it.
I think it's a great idea. And I also applaud their, reevaluating of how effective their commercials are going to be in a different situation and thinking ahead. Proactive.
That's right.
Yep. All right. What's next?
Well, it's almost, so we're thinking ahead, and this next story is a little bit more of a look back, kind of, as much as it is a look ahead, which is that, it's like I want to say a bad penny. Is that a Britishism? A bad penny keeps coming back.
I think it is.
Watching too many British, too many shows on Acorn TV. That QR codes are back. The pandemic has brought them back in an undead way.
I feel like they circle around every couple of years. Like your favorite or not so favorite fashion trend. But I will say that this use of them during the pandemic, I find actually helpful. Whereas a lot of times, the reason I think a lot of marketers have a gripe about QR codes is that people were just throwing them on stuff. There was no strategy behind it. And, you know, it was like, well, I can just remember your website. Why do I need to use this QR code? Or I can, you know, just remember something, and, or you can just put the URL in the ad, and I'm intelligent enough to figure it out. So, you know, like, good advertising, there's a purpose for every line of copy. There's a purpose for every image. There's, you know, everything has its use. And so I think that the reason, amongst many reasons, I'm just off the cuff here, that QR codes have gotten a bad rap is because they're just like useless in a way. They're not utilitarian. But in a pandemic, one of the uses, and specifically in like the restaurant industry, is that if you're going inside a restaurant, or if you're dining outside, you know, one less thing for germs to exchange is the menu. So if you're not handed a menu, but you have to, you know, I've only been inside of a restaurant. I wasn't really inside, I was outside, but it, you know, there was a covering. I've been to 2 restaurants since March, whatever, 15th. And one of them was using QR codes, and they had the QR code on the table, and you just did the thing, and then you saw the menu, and then the waitress came by, and you could just tell them what you wanted.
Yeah, I like that. And
yeah,
I guess I was trying to think of the reason why I like previously would have started to think of QR codes as like very much a thing of the past that I don't regard as like cutting edge. And, you know, I think it's because, you know, a number of years ago when it was really big, it was in some cases being misused in a way, like put on the side of like a bus. And it's like, well, most of the time that bus is moving. So how am I going to, I mean, maybe in some instances that would work, but you know, it was being put everywhere. People were putting it on their business cards.
I was just going to say, yeah, business cards. I saw that a lot, and I'd be like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Your other information is right here. Like,
right.
Why?
It was everywhere.
What am I getting? Is it a coupon? Like what are you putting on your business card?
Right. It infiltrated our lives a bit in that way, but I think this use is so practical. So I much like it.
I think the other thing is, at the beginning, back when we were all trying to figure out what's it for, you had to have a special piece of software to read a QR code. And since then, now when you go in to open up your camera and take a picture, before you hit the picture thing, your camera app will typically say, oh, I noticed this is a QR code. Did you want to go visit this site? And you press that instead of pressing the photo button, and then you're taken to the place. So it's a much smoother experience. It doesn't require you having to stop and download some software or figure out what's going on, or find that piece of software on your phone, amongst all your hundreds of other apps. So the ease of use has improved so much that now it truly is the quick response of the QR that it was always meant to be. So maybe it's time has finally come.
Yeah,
hooray for maybe. QR codes.
So QR code 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting changes to our lives thanks to the world that we're in today. And speaking of the world that we're in today, we are in this world of Twitter and the idea of tweet storms and people having trouble doing them. So WordPress, and specifically not WordPress, but Jetpack, which is a plugin to WordPress being the software that is a lot of websites are built on, has developed this way of like you publish a blog post and then it immediately turned into a series of tweets. And is that the worst? Is that a bad idea or the worst idea ever? What do you guys think?
Well, so as I kind of try to understand how this feature works and how it's supposed to be implemented, there was a lot of criticism around it because if you spend time building content for your website, the idea and the reason you might share it out on social media is to direct people back to your website. So you kind of like use a post in Twitter to tease it and to get people curious and interesting and, compel them to actually go to your website where they can hopefully check out other content and maybe they buy something or whatever it might be, right? Well, this feature keeps the user in Twitter and gives you, the whole blog post there and a series of tweets. So there's like no reason to go to the website. And then, so that's kind of one thing. And then the second thing that I think I understand is that, for people that are maybe embedding a Twitter feed in their own website, this content that doesn't belong to the site where it's showing up, it's like, well, who's the owner of this content? It's not clear. And so the original publisher doesn't get credit for it necessarily. It's just kind of just, you have to do a lot of like back end wizardry to give the proper credit to begin with when you have content that's being distributed widely. And you can read the same article on 15 different sites, but it has to be attributed correctly. And this is kind of like removing that a little bit, it seems.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that comes to mind with anything that's taking one content for one channel and just taking it as is in terms of the copy and putting it on another is, it begs the question, does it need to be adjusted for this other audience or other format? And I think especially for Twitter, the answer is yes. I mean, people want bite-sized content, at least shorter maybe than a blog post. So I don't know. I think it's cool that it's integrated, but I don't know I'd be curious to know if people on Twitter are going to really make it through all that content.
Right. There's a piece of this where, I mean, clearly on Twitter, these sort of threaded series of tweets are very popular, and people like seeing a story play out. Sometimes it's a story playing out in real time, where like there's one that happened a couple weeks ago with a family in India had a whole bunch of rice delivered, and all of the drama about like a truck full of rice is in their driveway and they don't want to take delivery of the rice and the driver refuses to go away. I'll post, we'll add that to the show notes, but watching it happen in real time, and like seeing the occasional tweets by the guy who was reporting back from his parents in India. I mean, it was funny. He was a good writer. He's apparently a novelist as well. So it was fun. It was fun to watch that evolve. And then there are times when people will have like a point that they want to make on Twitter, and it will take more than just one or two tweets. And so, but that story then plays out and usually links to other things. A really well done, Twitter TweetStorm can do that. But the idea that you could write an essay and then just dump it in, it's almost like it makes it too easy in the way that email is easier than sending a postal mail. You know what I mean? Like having a little bit of a friction to keep you from just being able to dump stuff out there is a positive, because it makes you, like you're saying, kind of, Kelly, craft it to really fit the medium and think about how each tweet is going to lead to the next, as opposed to just writing a bunch of sentences and then having a tool slice them up and drop them in. So the craft is lost in the course of this feature.
Agreed.
I feel like you lose control of some of the, maybe, I don't know, I haven't looked at how it works in Jetpack, but like, can you say when you want the tweets to break apart, or does it just take every 280 characters and boom, cuts it at the max character thing?
And do the dot.
Yeah, it just seems like you're giving up control of how you want it to show in Twitter or whatever platform you're using to sort of leverage the content.
I think it'll be, so I guess we'll see what happens, whether, a new version will come about, if Twitter will choose not to allow it. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know. This is definitely one to watch. And I'm afraid that we won't be able to help but watch it, because I'm afraid there's going to be just a whole boatload of new tweets that I'm going to have to find a way to block or something.
Or people just won't use it. And because I think the big thing in the article was like, what's in it for me, the publisher of the content? It doesn't seem like it's geared toward getting me more, visitors to my site or more engagement on my content. It's not like nothing about it. It seems like it's for Twitter. It benefits Twitter. It keeps people inside of the Twitter platform. And that may be fine if you want to have conversations about your content in Twitter and you don't want them to go to your website for any reason, then fine. I guess this is a good tool for you. But if you want to drive people to your website and you consider social media a leverage point, then this doesn't seem to be a very good tool.
I suppose it depends on what your goals are, as you say. Is it social engagement? Do you have a great community on Twitter as it is, and you just want to put more and different content out there? Maybe this is something to try.
Well, folks who are watching, what do you think? Do you think that, are you going to try and create a blog post and then tweet it out, parcel it out in tweets? Let us know how you're going to use this. If you're never going to use this, if you're going to find ways to leave Twitter just because of it, or if it doesn't really matter. Could be any of those. So, and that also, just any of the news that we're talking about today, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And do you see any cool things happening that we should be talking about and sharing here on Office Hours next time? Let us know. You can always chat something to us in the live stream chat, or send us an email at officehours@shipcollaborative.com. So that brings us back to our feature for the week, which is landing pages. So we're landing on our next topic, and our topic specialist is Kelly. Kelly, what kinds of things did you want to share about landing pages? What should people be thinking about?
Yeah, so, I think leading from a conversation we had a few weeks ago where we were talking about copywriting, that is one big part of, what's on the landing page, but there's really just, we could spend an entire episode just talking about what you put at the very top of your landing page. So my hope is today just to talk about and see what others maybe think about, what are the best practices and what kinds of things can make or break, a good conversion rate on a landing page. So I think we have an example from Unbounce that we can pull up as we kind of walk through a little bit of the anatomy of a landing page, and we can talk through some of the best practices with each of them. So
just trying to get this graphic to behave in a nice way that's going to play with our live stream. So give me one tiny second while I pull that together. And where is this graphic from, in case people want to take a look at it?
Yeah, so it's from Unbounce, which is a good resource for web design and user experience. They have good blog source, and they've made this wonderful little I don't know what you call this. This is not an infographic, but just a graphic to help point out some of the key elements of a landing page here. So the first thing you might notice about this, other than that adorable koala bear at the top right, is that this page, versus a regular website page, doesn't have that menu bar across the top, right? So there's your eye even is sort of drawn down. You're not as distracted. There's not as many opportunities for people to come here and then go somewhere else, because as we've talked about with landing pages before, and even previous episodes of Office Hours, this landing page, as a singular goal, a singular call to action, and that is very much on purpose. Not just so it can have a high conversion rate, but also for the user. I mean, in theory, the person who landed on this page came in from an ad, in the case of a paid landing page anyway. And so they have already expressed intention that they are interested in what you're offering. So, give the people what they want, get to brass tacks, I guess. So the no menu bar is certainly on purpose. Usually a landing page will have a hero image. In this case, it appears to me like they're using like a snippet of what their software actually looks like. So this whole like light purple area, I guess, is kind of that hero area, I would say. And the big thing with that is like catch people's attention, keep it, and know that you only have like 7 seconds or less to make that impression. 7 seconds is what I read in an article recently. And I know for me, some days when I'm super distracted, it's even less, it's like 2 seconds before I decide whether I'm going to stay or not. And this hero image area is a place that if you have something there and it's not there's a high bounce rate on the page or an increasing bounce rate, that's something that's really good to A/B test, and put that in your testing strategy. And then the copy parts of the page. So the headline, which you see here, is treat your human resources like people in this case. We want this headline to be rewarding in that it kind of answers what they may have questioned from their search, if this is for a paid search campaign. But it should tell the people that are visiting this page, what is this page about and why should I care about it, essentially. So kind of get right to it. Other things to consider here are, for, again, the purposes of paid search, it's a good opportunity to put a highly searched keyword in here so that you have that in your H1, in your headline. So those are some other things to consider there. But the other parts of copy that are on this page, of course, are the supporting copy, which can be in different places throughout the page. And those give you an opportunity to just talk about what are you offering? Like, what problem are you solving for the people that are visiting this page that they might be interested in? And so it's a way to kind of do that, but do it briefly, So the other is the form. So that's the call to action here. And I think when it comes to the form, we could talk, I think all three of us could probably talk about what's the best practice for an inquiry form or a form in general for an entire segment of office hours. But for the purpose of today, I'll just say, keeping this short, depending on what you're asking people to do here. So depending on what the user's decision-making journey is, will kind of dictate not only what content is on this page, but what you're asking them to do here. So if you're asking them to make a decision where they don't have to run it past other people in their department, or it doesn't cost a lot of money, or those types of factors, you may be able to get them to sign up for a plan that day or order the product that day. But if it's something that maybe a business has to decide whether or not they're going to move their web hosting to somewhere else, that's a little bit of a bigger decision. The journey that they take to get there may be longer and involve more people. So putting just an interest form here makes a little more sense in that case.
Yeah, signing up for a demo, joining a mailing list,
right.
Downloading a white paper or something along those lines.
Right, a little bit lower barrier to entry.
Yes. Sure. And I don't know about you guys, but if there is a form on a page that has, 5 or more fields, I tend to bounce on those types of pages.
I have to really want the content that I'm signing up for. I have to really want that case study that I'm downloading or whatever it is. And I've done longer form field completes for the downloadable white paper for sure. It just depends on, that we really have to know your user and what their intent is.
Right. I think there's part of it where the form itself, like adding one more field, can be put in there on purpose just to have people, indicate that they're very serious. So if what you're offering is so tempting, but then you want to filter out some of the people who aren't the right people for you, you can use a form field either to help you then decide how to react to them. What does your business need, or what's your company name or something, or what's your location. That might also help you route them to the right person to respond, the right, follow-up rep. So there might be a couple of reasons, but yeah, it is hard to, first name, last name, and email is kind of classic, or sometimes even just first name and email is all that's gonna make it through.
Right.
And one point I would make about like form usability, you'll see here in this little mock-up that they've got here, that's very faint, I realize, but they have the name above the field itself. And that is current, most research is saying that that's a best practice as well, because as we're just reading down, like having to read across is more effortful. And so having to just have your eye go down without having to jump around helps with the usability of the form. And therefore is going to be more likely to actually get the action that you want.
Right. You have to make it easy because you're essentially this whole page is just trying to say, here's this valuable thing I can give you, I being whoever created the landing page, in exchange for your personal information, whatever you're going to provide in this form. So it's got to be something they feel is worthwhile.
Sure. I would make this tiny thing that I think I would put this checkbox above this button, because otherwise you do have to do what we were just saying, where you go down, then I have to jump down here and then come back up here. Unless they don't want people to fill in this checkbox, which is possible. They don't want to tell them that this is a required checkbox, so they definitely put that above.
Right, having that button as the last thing to seal the deal. You're right. That makes sense. Other elements on this page, if you look at the bottom there with Jillian Potato is, I believe, the person they have used as an example.
A real person, they say.
Perhaps a real person. sure that's someone's name, is this term that you may hear in marketing jargon, which is social proof. So it's just testimonials or quotes from current customers, but it's saying don't just take it from us. Of course, we think we're great, but also hear from people who have actually used this product. And it just helps reinforce for those who have gotten to this point on the page and have not already converted. They're still not sure. They're still researching, whatever that may be.
What do you guys think about the fact that she's facing off the page rather than looking at the text? Or do you, I've seen
choice.
I've seen things, that you typically, and this is not just landing pages, but generally when you're combining copy and pictures of people or animals or whatever, and that you want the people or the animals, the eyes on the thing that you want them to look at. And different eye tracking studies will show that has a better performance. So Jillian ought to either turn around or come sit over here, maybe.
I think that kind of what you're talking about highlights that, when you build a landing page, you're probably not going to want to do it by yourself. You've got somebody who's writing the copy and somebody who's designing around it for these best practices, in addition to, talking to your sales team so that you can understand, who the user is. And then you've got like a business decision maker, perhaps, that looks at this process when it's all done to give the final seal of approval. So often we talk about, how did that ad get through all those people and get it to the market? Like what would, we've just talked about it a lot, and it's similar to a landing page. Like we'll go to a landing page and notice something subtle. That's a very subtle thing that you just pointed out. But I think that like when you have, multiple people kind of looking at it, somebody would have caught that and just put that picture on the other side, maybe, or reversed it
or flipper.
Yeah. Or
right.
flip it. Yeah, presumably the designer, maybe in this case, would have
exactly
cut that. Yeah.
Yep. I wanted to say about headlines, and we talked about headlines at the top, but when you combine headlines with that 7-second attention span, you have to assume that people at first are just going to scan the headlines. So you really want to make sure that they're telling the story that you wanted to tell, so that if someone does not read that supporting copy, they have enough information to know if this feels like the right thing for them and they're in the right place. And this is an interesting, compelling thing that they're actually going to take action on, and fill out a form or pick up the phone and call you or whatever it might be. That's your action. So I think that's again, like another reason where design and copy working together really shine, because you have to make sure that this compelling headline that you've spent a lot of time editing and getting just right is designed in such a way and positioned on the page in such a way that people can easily sort of scan through and be like, oh, okay, this is an HR software. I'm an HR person. Great. This is easy to use. Great. And then there was something else that made sense to me, and it maybe sealed the deal. Like, oh, this is for teams of all sizes. Got it. Check. Like, okay, these ring all of my bells and check all of my boxes. I will go ahead and fill out the form now.
Yeah, that is a great point. And I think it's, I think as designers of landing pages and copywriters and image selectors, we have to have the humility to know that most people that visit this page are skimming it, despite the fact that we may toil over the grammar and the punctuation and the right word choice. A lot of people are going to skim it, and they're only going to absorb these, maybe if you look down under the features, like these more visual cues, and having these bite-sized pieces to reinforce what the value is or how you compare to competitors is key, because we know, as Sarah, you started to say, people are skimming.
And almost the supporting copy in a digital landing page like this is more for the ad platform to make sure that the keywords are there than for the actual user. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't write that copy for the user. You absolutely should, but they're less likely to be reading top to bottom every single piece of content. But the search engines are, and they're determining ad relevancy and landing page relevancy and quality scores and a whole bunch of stuff we're not going to go into today. But it's important to know that your copy on your page has a couple of functions.
Yeah. You almost have to design the landing page for the reader and the skimmer type. There's, while you may have one target audience in mind in terms of behavior, you kind of have to accommodate both.
Right.
And people hopefully move from being the skimmer to the reader if they're seeing the things that are calling them in. So People are in different mindsets at different times.
Mhm.
But we want to get them here. This is where we want them to be, and clicking that button.
Another thing that it can be subtle in a design element like this is like, you'll see it. I don't see it as much on this page per se, but like subtle arrows or design elements that point you to the call to action or the form. I'm not suggesting blinking buttons or anything of that nature, but just really like, if for instance, that little purple hero area had a little tiny arrow down pointing out of it, that I see a lot. And I think it's even something that pops up in best practices, like sort of point people to the thing you want them to do without it being like a big neon flashing sign. It has to be a little more subtle.
Well, in particular, when you get down to here, and then it would be nice to have another thing that's like next step, or I don't know, you want to repeat the form here, but something that would send you back. But that you could alternatively have an arrow like, where am I supposed to go now? And I'm like, maybe I should go back up, just sort of subtly remind you this is the place to be here. Although big neon signs seem like that would be kind of
could do the trick.
Depending on the application, could be kind of fun.
Yeah,
go here. I'm thinking of like a Bugs Bunny or something.
Yeah. A lot of time, like you're saying, like, you know, one thing that you might want to test is location of the form. So you could have it like it is here, which is like pretty much above the fold, and above the fold meaning like a newspaper fold, like all the important headlines are above the fold in the top of the newspaper. Similarly, you know, that's kind of how this page is designed. And that is a pretty, you know, sometimes people will put the form right in the hero image. Like it's right there. Like you don't need to read any, like if that headline is really doing a good job if you fill out that form without reading anything else, but maybe that's possible with what you're selling. But if you, for example, had the form lower down, and like we've done this on a lot of our pages and found this to be successful, it just depends on the product that you're selling, is that there'll be buttons along the way, like, oh, are you ready to fill out this form, or like learn more, or get started, or next steps, and then that button will jump you down. So similarly, in this way, if you've got your form up high, you could have those buttons that jump people back up, and just a little bit of wayfinding so that they don't have to scroll. I mean, it's kind of like how lazy are we? We can't scroll back up, but it's a thing.
I think it's helpful. Yeah. It's helpful on mobile, especially because it's going to be a lot longer, you know, thinner and longer, you know, on the mobile device. So having a way that people don't have to, you know, thumb all the way back up is helpful.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. So obviously the goal of these landing pages is to convert folks. So whatever that conversion action may be, right? So if it's in this case to sign up for a one-to-one demo, we do have some best practices, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many more, and we continue to discover them, but ones that we know to be true, some of which we've mentioned, are including a video on the page. We do this in a lot of our landing pages where, you know, if the client has the resource for it. And I think this, you know, allows a way for people to not only learn more about the business, but also in some cases will like humanize a page in a way, like, especially if this video, of course, includes human beings. Yeah. But studies have shown that it improves the landing page conversion rate by like almost 90%. I think 86% is the stat at hand. So it is something that is best practice. Other things, and I know we have talked about, and we like to beat this drum, which is think about page speed, think about load time. If it takes 1 extra second for a page to load, your your conversion rate will drop by 7%. They say that's sort of and then, you know, think about for every second after that. So really, you really want this page to load in under 1 second, which seems fast, but that's how our attention spans are kind of at this point, and we're used to the immediacy of the internet, right?
Yeah. All the more reason, I think, to consider one of these like an external site that's separate from your main site, so that all of the different scripts and things that you've got making your whole site work are not loaded into this one, or tuning your site in such that you've really stripped down the amount of scripts and graphics and things that have to get loaded, so that it's super fast.
Yeah, so maybe the other person on your landing page development team is, your web developer, your technical person who can, once you've got everything queued up, they can look at it from a page speeds perspective and, implement tactics that will help improve it before you launch. And like we talked about, this is from Unbounce, and they're one of those tools that allows you to take your paid traffic off of your site, and it's really just streamlined to your landing pages, and they're focused on the speed of it for you, which is kind of nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And then the other best practice that we sort of talked about earlier was like really pay attention to your messaging. This is where your copywriter is so key. But not just looking at this landing page in an isolated way, but thinking about, again, I'll speak in terms of a paid search campaign for this example, but what did the person search?
Mm-hmm.
What does the ad copy say? And then what does the landing page say? Is it rewarding them? Is it answering their question? Is it giving them, again, back to give the people what they want? Is it giving them what they're looking for and answering their questions?
I think the other element that you have to consider is that person's decision-making state. Are they in learning mode? Are they in panic mode? They need to buy something quickly. They need it to be, good, and they just need some of that social proof, and boom, they're going to buy it. Obviously, there's so many different products that you can sell via a landing page. So you really have to consider also that user's kind of emotional state and how you can, if they're stressed out or they're in a hurry, making sure that from a design standpoint, you've got calming colors and tones. And then from a copywriting standpoint, that, not only are you rewarding them with giving them what they're looking for, but also that it's in the right tone to address their emotional state, which is, psychology, and it requires you to think about that customer and their journey and how they're making decisions. It's a lot of things that go into one of these little landing pages.
Yeah, it's remember that the people visiting these landing pages are human beings, so
Mm-hmm.
it's good to take that into account.
Great.
Yeah, so those are some of the best practices. Again, there are many more. If those that are viewing have others that you wanted to throw out there or have questions on, or if you have opinions on the ones that we said, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you check back the earlier episode where we talked about landing pages, and we had a couple other examples. It also might give you some bright ideas about what to do and why certain landing page techniques, how they might change from industry to industry, even though these core things would be true no matter what.
Right.
If folks have any questions about landing pages, then want to shoot something either to any of us and get Kelly's insight on the questions that you've got, always feel free to send an email to officehours@shiftcollaborative.com, and we'll address it in a future item here, or maybe a blog post. Could be a tweet storm. Who knows how exactly we'll respond. We'll write a blog post and throw it onto Twitter while we're at it for good measure.
With a QR code embedded.
Yeah. New business cards for everyone. Cool. Well, thanks, Kelly, for coming on and talking to us more about landing pages. It's exciting.
Sure. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Max liked it.
Max is back. He's back because he was so interested.
He's my target audience. Yeah.
He liked that koala a lot.
Yeah. He's waiting for it to run around so he can go chase it down.
Play with it.
Well, we have another topic we wanted to talk just a little bit about because it's kind of coming back it's a thing that comes up often, and I think people don't necessarily know quite what it is, and yet so much of the internet in particular is built on it, and that is the concept of open source, which the name alone it seems like it's clear, and then I don't know how much people really know what it is. So like, if you guys didn't look it up, what do you suppose? I've got here a graphic that's got some keywords in it, but
yep.
What do you know about open source, or what do you think people typically think about when if they hear the phrase open source?
So, just from the name, if I knew nothing else, and I did see that software was in there, I would think that perhaps it was software that the code was readily available to look at, that it wasn't hidden behind anything, that if you were a person that really wanted to understand how something works, like you're the person that takes apart the radio and then reassembles it so you can understand how the technology works, then you could do that with an open source piece of software. You could look under the hood, so to speak, and check it out. And that's what I would think if I didn't know anything, it was just the name.
And that's pretty much what it is, right?
I think the thing that people don't, maybe the second part, I guess, of it that seems valid is that not only can I look at it and, see how it's, made, I can build on it. That's the other part of the open source that I think that it's been sort of in conflict over the evolution of open source and closed source or proprietary software development. I think that there's been some conflict around that piece of it, like, oh, this is available to anybody can take it. So like, is there no proprietary thing anymore? And then you just have to explain a little bit around, well, if you take it and you start here at the foundation and you put a bunch of your own stuff on it, well, now it's your thing, you just got there a little faster, and you built on the backs of other people that did good work, and so it's more collaborative and better for all the people, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a thing about software that I think isn't obvious to the world, which is that, like every other thing that gets written, once you've written it, whoever you are, whether you're a team or a company or a person, you own the copyright on it. And so really this all kind of circles around that idea of copyright. Who owns this piece of intellectual property that is a computer program? And should, do I, if I've written something, if I want to protect my copyright, do I protect it by not letting you see it? Because if you copy it and you go and do other things with it, is it still mine? Is it now yours? If you've changed it, how much do you have to change it to make it be something that you've done? And in when we think about films and books and things, you think of people building on characters, and there's a whole bunch of things around that. But so back in the 80s in particular, and the very early 90s, there started to be this question of like, how do we as an industry, as a software writing industry, grow and expand the way that science grows and expands by building on the things that people have done before? And so copyright started to feel like more of a hurdle. I'm sorry, Max keeps jumping up and down from the table. That's why I'm shaking. There's no earthquakes here in Highland Park right now. But so like if we want to progress, we want to build on other things. We don't want to keep creating things from scratch. We want to build on components and toolkits that exist already, kind of like you were saying, Sarah. And so, and in particular, software tends to be built on layers. So you've got like the stuff that's the circuit boards, and then the code that is working directly with the different things that are in there. And then you move up a layer and you've got your operating system, and you move up a layer and you've got the programs that run on the operating system. And each of these layers, if I have to develop everything from the ground up, then it's going to be hard to do. Once something is really, really good, why can't I just start from there and be able to progress? And so people wanted to move away from the idea of copyright, and they started to come up with this term, copyleft. I don't know, have you guys ever heard that before?
I haven't. I didn't stumble across it in the research either.
Yeah, it's like it was the alternative to copyright, which is to say, it's now what we might call Creative Commons, which is a new form of copyright, which is to say, I give you permission to use this, but you have to say that it was from me, that you started with my thing. And so that concept, that the people were playing around with these different concepts and saying, well, information should be free, like all information should be free, and really fairly, I would say, radical ideas about code, like nobody owns code, and that seems extreme. But what can we do so that we can feel like we can trust what we're working with, so that a company can use a piece of software and know that somebody will be able to help them with technical problems in the future. Like, so there has to be a certain amount of critical mass around a piece of software. I'm sorry.
I was going to say accountability back to the original developer, so you could know if you were building on this thing that it was built well.
Right. that it was built well, and that being able to see it lets you evaluate yourself. Like if I can take a look at the code that's been made, I can then myself, evaluate or hire somebody and say, is this trustworthy? And then determine if it is. And so open source came to be this idea that groups of people, distributed groups of people, are going to be better in many cases at building software than a small group that's working away. No matter how hard that small group works, the more people we add in doing their own tiny bits of it in a collaborative way, if you've got, they may all be working in different pieces of it, but overall we'll be able to see progress in a way that it'll scale in a way that a small group cannot do, and be more sustainable in the long run. Yeah. And you can tell that it's almost in an evolutional way. You can tell this is working because so much of the web came about because of this kind of a thing. And so much of the systems and the softwares that we use today are successful because of being open source. And they have just sort of beat out many of the proprietary technologies. So, and I think it's okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say one of those technologies that we use all the time is WordPress, which is an open source platform. And then all of the plugins and themes are independently, in most cases, developed. And, you can pick and choose based on all sorts of things and all sorts of facets.
That's right. And so WordPress actually uses the GNU general public license. And so there's actually, so to that idea of the copyright, so there is a license that you're being given permission by the community to use the software WordPress, and these are the terms of your being able to use it. And there are things like you can't then what you can and can't do. And if you are going to make money from using it, which for example Shift does in building websites, what are the terms for that? What can we say is shifts and what can we not say is shifts? And there, like any kind of law, there's a lot of interpretation to it, but you can see that this license has been in, the general license has been in effect since 1991, and it continues to, grow and evolve and so on since then. So I think it's fascinating. And I think and part of what I love about it is this idea of transparency and collaboration, which are so much the core of how Shift works. We believe that more people coming in and looking at a thing and working on it together and critically evaluating it is going to create a better and more effective product in the long run. Just like you were saying, Sarah, with that landing page.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Right. And for us, of course, that also extends to the client being able to do it. So we build websites that the client's going to be able to manage on their own. We don't try to lock them out of different parts of it so that they have to come back to us and pay us more money later on. But hopefully they'll be able to keep doing it, to keep doing the kinds of things that they need to and change the site off a lot and, learn a lot as they go. So I've always been fascinated by the concept, and it's one of those things that I don't know if everybody finds as interesting as I do, or if people even know that that's the foundation of the web that we work in every day.
Yeah, I think it's just I've only in my professional career known it as an open source, right? Like I have only built WordPress websites, so I have no other concept of, I've had clients that have these proprietary systems, and we usually have trouble with those. It's harder to understand them. They're not as user friendly, and there's so many different things locked down where you have to use a vendor. So I think open source is great, and I think that sort of goes back to the nature of who we are at Shift, because we love to collaborate and build on things and strengthen things and have other people strengthen our work and our ideas. So it's just much more in line with how we think as individuals and as an organization.
Absolutely.
I like that it's sort of viewing the universe as like more a community of folks than us sort of competing with one another. We're working together to make it to make a better product.
Right. Absolutely. And with that earthquake, Max is back to tell me it is lunchtime. So.
It is past lunchtime, lady. I want to eat.
So any parting words, folks, for our viewers this week?
No, I just thanks for being here, and thanks Kelly for joining us on another episode. Hopefully you'll come back again sometime.
Sure. Happy to.
Cool. And Max will be back, I'm sure. So
Max is here all the time. All right, folks, we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Go do good things. Try out go check out some open source software. Hop over to GitHub and see what you think of the code there.